You're going to know how to make almond milk. You're going to know how to make coconut milk. You're going to know how to flavor those milks to whatever your desire is. Very first step, we need to bring 4 cups of water to boil. So I've already got 4 cups measured out here. I'm just going to heat up my 4 cups of water over here, bring it up to a boil. So just whatever the highest temp is, that where the flames don't shoot out from underneath the sides of your pan. So to our boiling water, you can cut the heat. We're going to add 2 cups of shredded coconut. And what we're going to do is we add these 2 cups, and then we basically just let it steep in our hot water for about 30 minutes. You can be pretty flexible with the time here. A lot of recipes don't have any steep time, but I think if you don't include any steep time, you don't actually extract as much of the fats and the flavors that you want from your coconut. We're already seeing some extraction going on from the coconut because it's in such hot water. So that's just going to continue to steep for probably about 30 minutes or so. I'm going to dive into us making the almond milk now while our coconut is still steeping. So I took my 1 cup of almonds last night and I soaked them in 3 cups of water. I'm going to pour this out in the sink right now. We just discard the water. And if you want this done faster, instead of waiting overnight, you could get slivered or sliced almonds and soak them for 1 to 4 hours instead of overnight. And because you've got so much more surface area, you're able to make your almond milk a lot faster because they absorb that water so much quicker. I've got 2 things of sliced almonds here. There's a really big difference between these 2, and it's that these ones over here, and you can see the difference, these are blanched. And these ones are not. Blanched means they were quickly dipped in boiling water so that they could then clean off the skin. So you'll notice none of these have skin on the outside. These ones do. If you end up using blanched sliced almonds or even just regular almonds, the texture is going to get really weird in your almond milk. So I typically don't actually filter the nut meat out after I blend it. I'll show you how. I typically don't because I think it gives you more nutritional content long term if you keep the nut meat in. And I'm the kind of guy who really loves extra pulp in his orange juice. But if you use blanched almonds, you get this really weird grainy texture that's very unpleasant. So just use regular raw almonds, not blanched, and you'll get a much better product. So we've got 1 cup of almonds here that have been soaking overnight. We're going to add another 3 cups of water to these. We're going to just throw them right in the blender. And the ratio for this is 1 to 3. So 1 cup almonds, 3 cups water. With our coconut milk, it's a 1 to 2 ratio. 1 cup shredded coconuts to 2 cups of water. And we're doing 2 cups of shredded coconut, so that's why we used 4 cups in that pot. Okay, I've got 3 cups of water here. After that, we are going to add a pinch of salt. So you just want a little bit of salt. So this is a pretty small pinch. You can see that. Perfect. A little pinch of salt. That just helps bring out the flavors. Nice. And if you just want unflavored almond milk, you can stop right there. You don't have to add anything else to this. This is almond milk, unflavored. There's no extra chemicals to this. There's no stabilizers. It's almonds, water, and salt. That's it. We'll blend it up. You can either drink it straight away or you can filter it, and you're done. Some of the other things you can add, though, and you can do this to your coconut milk too, and I'll walk through some of them, is you can add sweeteners in a couple different forms. You could use table sugar. I do not recommend it just from a health standpoint, partially because table sugar is a mixture of fructose and sucrose. And the 2 of those together are so much worse for you than either of them apart that it's one of the big reasons for America's health epidemic. If you want to use any sweeteners, you can use dates, which is what I'm going to use. I really like using dates as a sweetener here. recognizing that dates still have sugar in them. They have fructose. You can also use something like honey, or you could use maple syrup. Just, again, bear in mind, and I'm calling this out because I got stuck in a conversation with someone the other day who didn't recognize this. Honey and maple syrup still have sugar in them. If it tastes sweet, there's probably sugar. Just like, if it tastes sweet, there's probably sugar. And this person was trying to tell me that fruit does not have any sugar in it. And they were trying to share health, right? I love that face, Christina. They were trying to share health advice to other people who were asking, hey, I'm trying to go sugar-free. What should I do? And this guy's like, you know what? You should eat as much fruit as you want, because fruit is, what did he say? He said it's God's golden crystallized sweetness. I think that's what he called it. You can eat as much as you want. Or sun's golden crystallized sweetness. That's what it was. And I was like, oh God, please don't. No. Fruit has fructose, aptly named. And that is absolutely a form of sugar. There's sugar in a lot of things. Please don't say that fruit doesn't have sugar. And the person got very defensive. But I really don't like when people share horribly terrible misinformation like that. And then I laughed later when I recognized that the adjectives he used to describe fruit are the same things people use to describe sugar, because he said crystallized sweetness, which is exactly what sugar is. It's crystallized sweetness. So anyway, back to, thank you for absorbing that tangent. So I'm going to use 2 dates here. I think anywhere from 2 to 4 works pretty well for this volume of nut milk. 4 gets a little bit on the sweeter side. 2 get just a hint of sweetness without it being too overpowering. And then I really like to add cinnamon to this, because when I add cinnamon, it ends up tasting just like a horchata. So whenever you buy dates, I recommend you get them with the pit inside still. They'll be more flavorful and they'll have better moisture content to them. If you get a date that's already pitted, they tend to be kind of dry. They're not that pleasant. And they tend to just have less flavor going on. So get dates with the pit still in them, remove the pit yourself, and then just, sometimes dates will have a little, none of these have it on there, but sometimes dates will have like a little cap on the end. You want to pull that off too, and then remove the pits. So I'm going to make mine like a horchata almond milk. So a whole tablespoon of cinnamon going in here. Cinnamon is actually pretty good for you. And one of the things I like about cinnamon, and this is pretty cool, cinnamon can help dull your body's insulin response. So it helps negate the fact that I put dates in here. It doesn't mean cinnamon is the catch-all and you get to add sugar to everything if you add cinnamon, but it helps reduce the amount of sugary response my body will have to the dates because I added cinnamon. So that's pretty cool. Plus it tastes amazing. You can also add some vanilla extract. So I'm going to add a teaspoon of vanilla extract to this. And you can use other extracts too. You could use like chocolate extract. You could use almond extract, I suppose. And that would probably make like a super almondy almond milk. That sounds really interesting. I might have to try that later. But another thing you could do is you could add cocoa powder to this. So you could make like a chocolate milk with this, or if I ever do that, I do all the same steps I just did, and then I add the cocoa powder, and then it tastes like a chocolate horchata, it was really good. We added all the ingredients. I didn't add the cocoa powder this time. Half tempted to, since I already took it out, but I'll leave it out this time. So you would want 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. So 2 big spoons of the cocoa powder. And then all we do here is we blend this for 2 minutes. So it's going to get a little loud for 2 minutes here. 1 to 2 minutes. I'd just go for 2 minutes because then we know we're good. We're going to start this on low. Point that up so you can see what's going on. We're going to start this on low just till things get mixed up a little bit, and then slowly crank it up until we're all the way up to 10, and just let that run for 2 minutes. Okay, so that's good. I just started it low till things kind of mixed, and then I slowly cranked it all the way up. we just need to make sure things get blended pretty well for a couple minutes. So the specific number doesn't really matter so much as just make sure it's blended all the heck. Now, what you'll notice is if you touch the sides of this, there's actually a good amount of heat going on after we blended it for 2 minutes. What's kind of cool is there's actually some foods you can cook in a Vitamix, like soups, that will cook entirely in the Vitamix because it creates enough heat to actually cook whatever's in there. Now, in this case, the heat is just a byproduct. It probably helps extract stuff a little bit, but it's not too important. So what we've got here, you can start drinking this right away. You can, nice, that looks great. You can start drinking this right away. You eat raw almonds, so you can definitely eat almond milk with raw almonds in it. This is usually how I consume it. Now, if you really don't like any texture to your liquids at all, you got a couple options. And so I've got some stuff right here to show you what we can do. So you can get something called cheesecloth. This stuff's pretty cheap. Basically, every grocery store has it. What you can do is you can throw some of this into a bowl and line the bottom of the bowl, pour your liquid onto it, and pick it up and squeeze it and wring it out to get all the juices. You can do the same thing, though, with just a really thin kitchen towel. So if you've got like a flour sack kind of kitchen towel, you can do that same thing. Just line your bowl, pour everything in there, pick it up, close it tight, squeeze it to get all the liquids out. The kitchen towel is a little bit easier to wash. You can just throw this in the wash with the rest of your laundry, and then you get your kitchen towel again. You can kind of wash and reuse your cheesecloth and still get to use it again. It's just a little more of a pain because it's a little more woven, and you will typically use it in layers. So this is actually 4 layers. Each fold here is 4 layers of cheesecloth. So you wouldn't just want to use one layer like this that's not thick enough to catch and strong enough to catch all those nut meats you're trying to filter out. You would want to just use like 2 to 4 layers of this. And I'll even show you a little demo. I'll do it in a small glass so you can see what it's like, because it's kind of fun how much liquid can come out of a tiny bit here. So I'm just going to hold the cheesecloth in place so it doesn't drop on me. And if you look in the bottom of the cup here, there's very little liquid that has come through, but the top is still pretty full because this is holding on the liquid so well and the solids. So what you would do is you just bunch up the top, and you can, I hope you can see how much liquid is falling out of this. I'm actually making a little bit of a mess on the counter. Here we go. You squeeze it, you can see, maybe this is a better angle for you, with my hand not in the way. You can see how much liquid is coming out of this, and it's leaving all the nut meat behind. Now, this is what most recipes online will tell you to do. I think it's an unnecessary step. I think the nut meat left in here is actually still really good for you. That's where all the nutrients are coming from anyway. Because as you saw, the only main other ingredients were water and salt. So squeeze it like this. It's also just a lot more work to do this, and it makes a lot more mess. So for the most part, I don't do this. If you want to taste a really smooth nut milk, though, you would do this to get that really smooth texture. Another option that is available, especially if you're going to be doing this a lot more in the future, is there's something called a nut milk bag. My hands are covered in almond milk now. There's something called a nut milk bag, which is a bag that's really similar to, say, a flour sack. And you just pour your milk into that, and you squeeze the whole thing like we just did for that small bundle there. I'll show you what this looks like without the liquid in it. So that's our almonds with some dates and some cinnamon and stuff. So because I need the space, because I'm using this blender again in just a second, for the coconut milk, I'm just going to pour this in this bowl and clean this guy out real quick. And then we'll be able to make the coconut milk, which just finished steeping. And the coconut milk, the solids end up being a little bit bigger than with the almond milk. So instead of having to use a cheesecloth or a flour sack or anything like that, we can just use a fine mesh strainer. And that's actually going to do a pretty good job of getting all the solids out for us. And so for our coconut milk, this has been steeping for 30 minutes. The shredded coconut is a 2-to-1 ratio. So we've got 2 cups shredded coconut, then 4 cups of water. Pour that right into the Vitamix or whatever blender you're using. You could potentially do this with a food processor. It's just a lot trickier to blend liquids in a food processor without having too much volume in there and making a huge mess and potentially having things leak all over the place. Also, if you're looking to pick up a blender like a Vitamix, the best thing to do is instead of buying it brand new, buy one on Amazon, one of the refurbished models. You get it for basically half off. It's refurbished by the same manufacturer, so you still get a warranty with it. And then you can also get some of their older models. So you'll notice this one has all like paddles and dials that are pretty easy to work with. You just want to avoid any models that have touch sensitive switches, because it's, I mean, when you're cooking in the kitchen, your hands get messy, food get into random places, they get all over your tools. Those touch sensitive switches can't tell the difference between your finger and food. So you'll try to adjust the speed setting and it won't adjust because there's like a little bit of oat milk or coconut milk or almond milk sitting there, and you're trying to touch the other part and it's reading the conductivity of the liquid there, and so it doesn't actually adjust. So get the paddles, get the knobs. The analog switches end up working best for something like this. Just a pinch of salt. And you can then also add any of the other flavorings that you want. You could add dates to this. You could use sugar. You could use honey. You could do cinnamon. You could do vanilla extract. You could do the cocoa powder. All the same things that we did for the almond milk. Like a chocolate horchata coconut milk is probably to die for. I will probably make another batch of this later this week and make it a chocolate horchata version. But I mean, it's, other than the steeping time and the hot water, it's almost the exact same. We blend it for 2 minutes, and then you could drink it like that, or we're going to run it through a fine mesh strainer, and it'll be a bit smoother. I do typically store it in like one of those bigger mason jars and throw it in the fridge. It'll last for 3 to 5 days in the fridge. Be totally fine typically. If it starts to smell funky by the 5th day, don't drink it. That's a pretty safe rule for things in your fridge in general. It smells funky, don't eat it, unless it's like a really good cheese. But most of the time you're going to end up drinking all of it by then. The fresh stuff tastes so good that you just drink all of it, especially when it's cinnamon horchata flavored. Vitamixes are pretty good at blending hot liquid because their cap at the top has kind of these little corner holes, and the way the top sits, it does allow steam to exit fairly well. And they've also got these locking tabs typically. Other blenders might just be a solid top, and they probably don't have the locking tabs. And what ends up happening when you blend hot liquids is there's still steam coming off of that liquid, and it builds up pressure inside of your blender. And then as you blend it, it allows more of that steam to escape more rapidly, which creates more pressure really fast. And it causes the top to shoot off as your blender is spinning really, really fast. And so that causes lots of hot liquids and steam to escape and explode and often hit the person who's blending. So be super duper careful blending hot liquids. This has been sitting for half an hour and it's still pretty warm. So just be careful. It's not as much of an issue with Vitamixes. They're pretty good about it. With other blenders, especially ones that don't have any sort of center hole that can open up, just be very mindful of how you're doing this. And if it's still really hot, probably just blend it on a lower speed for a longer period of time. You don't really need to worry about over blending this. So now we've got our coconut milk. I'm going to use the strainer on this because it's so damn easy. We just pour this in. And you can see how much is already coming through pretty easily. Some of it's going to pool in your strainer, so just use a spatula. Trying to move it around. We're just allowing more of the liquids to come out. You will have solids left over, and you'll see that in just a second here. That's how easy it is to get the solids removed from coconut milk. So you've got a pretty smooth coconut milk here. It would be the same thing if you added dates or cinnamon or cocoa powder. And then this is the same thing as the almond milk. Store in the fridge for 3 to 5 days. I typically store it in a big mason jar. So there's like the drinking glass size mason jar, right? There's this guy. And then there's a bigger size. It's probably about this tall. That's the perfect size for your almond milk. It might be a little bit small for the coconut milk because we've got 4 cups of water here to 2 cups of solid. So you might have to drink some of your coconut milk before you pour it in the mason jar. Just, to test to see how it turned out. Because, it's all science in the kitchen.